A group of white cops were caught beating a black undercover cop, leaving him with permanent neck injuries. This happened in 2017, but just recently made news as the cops have been found guilty. So I'm going to get to a video on this, but first a little more on what happened. On September 17th, 2017, Detective Hall was working undercover during a protest for Anthony Lamar Smith, a black man who was shot 5 times by cops in 2011. Hall, who was dressed in plain clothes, was mistaken for a protester by his fellow policemen. The cop was documenting the protest with a camera, and that's when he was detained and beaten, had his cell phone destroyed, and was finally arrested by fellow members of the St. Louis Police Department. Hall immediately underwent multiple surgeries following the attack by his co-workers and still suffers from permanent neck damage. So I'm going to get to a video now from Fox 2 St. Louis. This segment is about the trial that was still ongoing back in March.
The recorded live stream we're about to show you almost didn't make it so you could see this. This is the live stream recording moments before this undercover detective is beaten by St. Louis police officers. It happens quick, starting here when you hear "get on the ground."
Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! He's down! He's down! See your hand!
Detective Luther Hall said this seemed like forever, but was probably about a minute. When he got back to police headquarters, he says another officer was able to insert his pinky through a hole in his lip. This is Hall's phone, with what the detective describes as a baton-shaped blow to it. He said he couldn't access the video from his phone, but it came up on his cloud storage. It asked him to choose delete or save. Detective Hall saved it. The FBI says it pulled this face of an officer as the last image before the stream cut off. That's one of the 3 defendants, Officer Chris Myers. Myers' attorney Scott Rosenblum told jurors his client was nowhere near the beating, that he just picked up Hall's phone. He cross-examined Detective Hall for hours today, challenging Hall the hardest when questioning why Detective Hall started his own investigation outside of internal affairs. The detective said he wanted to know who beat him, and he wanted to find out if they were being disciplined for it.
Now, one obvious question that I have coming out of this is, why didn't Detective Luther Hall identify himself while he was being beaten? You know, not to try and victim blame here, but if I was in his situation, I would make sure that the officers knew I was one of them, because I don't want to be paralyzed. But apparently, according to reporting, he didn't want to out himself to protesters that were around watching. So, I mean, I guess if you're that committed to the job, but regardless here, obviously, the fault does not fall on Detective Hall. At the same time, though, be aware that officers are embedded in every single Black Lives Matter protest you've ever been to. Absolutely, there are undercover cops embedded in those protests. And this is an example of one of them where an officer got caught in the middle of it. Now, a little more here. So to make it even more obvious, the black officer who was beaten was actually there with an undercover white officer as well. And of course, the white officer walked away unharmed. So, you know, in case you were wondering, is this really an issue of race? Yes. Obviously, it's an issue of race. Obviously, the police target black men over white people. Now, a little more here. So Dustin Boone, a former cop with the St. Louis Police Department, was found guilty Thursday of depriving his injured fellow officer, Detective Luther Hall, of his civil rights. The deprivation of rights under color of law is a felony civil rights charge and could put the ex-cop behind bars for up to 10 years. 2 former cops with the department, Randy Hayes and Bailey Coletta, both also pleaded guilty to the beating earlier this year, according to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. So, you know, at least they are being charged and there's some actual accountability here. But ultimately, this is just another example of cops showing how they are overtly racist, regardless of the situation. Now, Boone, the officer who was charged, also has a history of violence against protesters and racism. In 2017, he allegedly slapped a case suspect in the face and sent officers texts joking about it, saying the suspect got his eyes widened with a little slap from a white boy, LOL. Texts also allegedly included racist language, like the N-word, according to police reports. Early this year, Hall was given $5 million in a settlement against police. Boone's sentence is expected in early July. So, one of many, I'm sure, on the force that engage in this kind of behavior. And this one happened to get caught. So another example of the police using force in a way that clearly was not warranted. And just another situation here where this would not have been caught had it not been for the fact that this officer who was beaten was an officer and not a protester.